Shalom, welcome to Rob on the Rock. I'm Rob Van Hoff, and today I want to answer a question I got that's a great question. Do the apostles cite the Greek Torah all the time, or do they ever cite from the Hebrew? Do we have any examples? So I wanted to look at Romans 9 because there's a great example for us to look at here. So the question of apostolic citation of the Old Testament or of the Tanakh, and whether those citations lean towards the Hebrew or what we call the Masoretic tradition, or do they echo what we see in the Greek Torah or the Septuagint? It's a complex question, and each and every citation has to be taken on its own and investigated. But one great example is in Romans 9, where Paul cites the book of Exodus twice in a row. What we'll see here is in the first instance, he cites it precisely as we find in the Greek Torah, which actually fits the Hebrew perfectly. 2 verses later, he cites Exodus again, and his citation matches the Hebrew, but not the Greek Septuagint tradition or the Greek Torah. So we're going to look at each of these in turn. The first one is Romans 9:15 that you see here. Both the Masoretic text, the Septuagint, and Paul's citation here in Romans is clean, tight translation. I will have mercy on whomever I will have mercy. I will have compassion on whomever I will have compassion. It's a beautiful rendering. The Greek is of the Hebrew, no arguments whatsoever. And of course, this is in the context of Paul's explanation of God's sovereignty. The next verse that I want to look at is just 2 verses later in Romans 9:17. Romans 9:17, where he quotes Exodus 9:16. Both the Masoretic text and Paul read, "For this reason I have raised you up." This is the Lord speaking to Pharaoh. "For this reason I have raised you up." And Paul in the Greek follows exactly what we find in the Hebrew, which is the he'amadticha. I have caused you to stand. I have raised you up. Whereas the Septuagint or the Greek Torah reads, "For this reason you have been kept." Quite a difference. In the Masoretic and Paul's citation of this passage from Exodus, God is, Adonai, is the subject of the verb. He'amadticha, I have raised you up. So God is the subject, and Pharaoh is the object of the verb. I have raised you up. In the Septuagint rendering, for whatever reason, Pharaoh is the subject of the passive verb, and God is not mentioned. "For this reason, you have been kept," or "you have been preserved," or "you have been spared." It's rendered different ways in English. But there's a marked difference here between the Masoretic and the Greek Torah. We can't explain why the Greek translators translated the way they did, but we know that here Paul does not use the Septuagint tradition. Rather, he maybe he knows it in Hebrew by heart and is translating it into Greek from memory, or on the fly, or he knows of an alternative Greek tradition that matches the Hebrew. We don't know. But in this particular instance, in 2 verses back to back in the book of Romans in chapter 9, Paul cites Exodus. In both cases, Paul's citation, although he's writing in Greek, matches the Masoretic text. And in the second one, the quotation of Exodus 9:16, it's the Septuagint that is different. So this is just one instance where we can do a comparison so close. But overall, each individual citation needs to be taken and evaluated on its own. And sometimes the verses are just merely alluded to. In other words, it's not a literal translation or citation of either the Masoretic or the Septuagint, but through allusion, we know it's talking about that passage of Scripture. Shalom.